Oh crap, where's my notes?
You're ruining my introduction.
Where are they?
Dude, I don't know. Okay. Welcome to Media Morsels, the podcast about creativity and the media that feeds it. I'm Jessica, character and aesthetic enthusiast.
I'm Jamie, plot guy.
And I'm Mitchie, vibe checker and scene chewer.
And we're back again, and this week we are looking at Dan in Real Life, which is, somebody look it up, I don't have my phone. I think it's 2007.
I don't have my phone.
God damn it, why is it ever?
Chaos.
What the fuck, man? Okay, yes, it is 2007. Alright, so this week we watched Dan in Real Life, which came out in 2007. And it is a super duper sweet film about, like, family and finding love later in life. And I guess really, honestly, like, how quickly you can fall in love, too.
Mm-hmm.
Starring Steve Carell. So I thought this one was going to be really perfect for
Valentine's month.
yes.
In our month of romance.
Our Valentine's
Of love.
our Valentine's Extravaganza.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked this one because it's not your stereotypical, like, single young person runs into other single young person and they have romantic misadventures.
Yeah, the meet cute we've seen about 5 billion
Yeah.
times.
It's a different kind of meat.
Oh yeah, there's definitely like a textbook meet cute
Yeah,
in here, just
yeah.
the people involved are different.
This one is about a widower who is clearly middle-aged, and he gets to have all the romantic misadventures, and misadventures they are.
Definitely applies here, yeah.
So yeah, I guess without any further ado, let's enter the appetizer round.
Musical interlude.
So,
Beautiful, like sirens. Ambulance sirens.
God. Thanks for clarifying. All right, so for me, I distinctly remember when I went to see this movie because I was in high school, and me and my best friend in high school had both had gone to the theater. We'd met up to go to the theater. We were going to go see something really intense, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think it might have been I Am Legend.
Oh, yeah. Which we might get to at some point.
And yeah, it was going to be like a really intense movie. And so I was kind of like bracing myself for that. But of course, I Am Legend, if it was I Am Legend, and I'm pretty sure it was a really big deal. And all the tickets were gone. It was sold out.
Mm-hmm.
So we were like, well, fuck, we're already here. Like, what do we do?
2007, you would have been like, what, 15?
Yeah, right around 15. So we go to see I Am Legend. It's sold out. We're like, fuck, we're already here. So we scan the other movies on offer at the time, and nothing looked good. But Dan in Real Life, well, I don't know what that is, but I don't know, sounds kind of cute. So we bought tickets, and we went and we saw it, and I fucking loved it. And I just distinctly remember just the wonderful surprise of that movie, like really not expecting it to be as freaking good as it was. And I think it's also worth noting too that I think Dan in Real Life came out like a few weeks before Juno. And so one of the interesting things is as soon as you start up this movie, it has that very distinctive solo trumpet or whatever like sound.
Solo brass.
That very like 2007, like mid 2000s indie sort of.
Yeah, it's the score, it's the color grading.
Yes.
It feels very much
Yes.
of the time.
And I think everybody kind of associates that with Juno because Juno was the movie that blew up and was super big and sort of made that aesthetic, like brought that aesthetic really into the fore, even though there'd been a few other movies that had kind of played with it before. But Dan in Real Life was one of those sort of predecessors to Juno and that whole
Vibe,
genre,
yeah.
that whole vibe.
Genre of slightly grungy, kind of precious, weird, awkward moment.
Well,
Yeah.
the precious, weird, awkward,
Indie slice of life
yeah, like
dramedies.
portraying people as these like funny, flawed, but ultimately sort of good people.
Yep.
So, yes, that is a treasured memory of mine. And that is when I first saw Dan in real life, and it has been one of my favorite romantic movies since then.
And for my part, Jess showed me this movie for the first time, and I want to say it was fairly early on in our relationship because we watched it in your shitty old apartment.
Oh my God, yeah.
The one with the poorly insulated windows and...
You mean the one with basically no insulation?
Correct. So we were like cuddled up under a comforter and watching this on your laptop.
Yes.
And I remember that it took a little bit of convincing to get me to watch it because like it is of that sort of like mid-2000s dramedy, and I was fully anticipating, I think it's because like very often when comedians do more serious roles, they can go like real dark or depressing.
Yeah.
See Robin Williams in Final Cut.
Yeah, or Jim Carrey.
Robin Williams, Jim Carrey, both great
Yeah.
examples. So I was kind of bracing for something like that, where it's just like a big downer.
Like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless
oh
Mind.
boy! But that is not what we got here. It is, in fact, a comedy still. Again, I've turned it a dramedy a couple of times
Yeah.
already, and I think that's appropriate, because it is like...
Yeah.
It's got elements of family drama, but it never gets, like, too serious about
Yeah.
it. And like Steve Carell has done a lot of really stupid roles
Yeah.
and like really raunchy, lowbrow humor kind of thing. This is not that. It's a lot more
Yeah.
nuanced. Honestly, he gives a great performance in here.
He does.
So it was very much a pleasant surprise for me.
Yeah. Well, and I remember, I think maybe I never watched things like 40-Year-Old Virgin or any of the other things. That was just so not interesting to me. So I think this was actually the first time I really saw Steve Carell in anything, and I really liked him. And so then I went to go see Get Smart and Crazy Stupid Love, both of which I actually really liked too. So then, like, I think I've seen, like, snippets of 40-Year-Old Virgin, and I'm just like, ugh.
Yeah.
Dude, why? Why did you do
Oh,
it?
like Anchorman.
Oh, yeah, Anchorman. I mean, I guess The Office, but I haven't... Okay, I know, like, a lot of people are going to be like, what? Out there, but I've never really watched The Office.
You're in good company because I haven't either.
Honestly, like I've seen a couple of episodes and that's been enough.
I'm not really sure that we're, like, people who really...
Vibe with that kind of humor, really.
Yeah. So this is the version of Steve Carell that I really appreciate and I kind of stick to.
So, this was actually my first experience with this movie. Having already seen a few movies of Steve Carell's, I came off seeing 40-Year-Old Virgin first. And then, like, I saw, what was it, Dinner for Schmucks or something like that.
God.
The entire premise of the movie is, like, you're inviting people that you think are worse than you. And I'm like, this is not... No, this
It's
is not...
mean,
Kinda like
and it's
crude and
cringe.
cruel
Yeah, it's very
humor.
mean-spirited.
Yeah.
And, like, I honestly... That movie alone kind of set me off away from watching anything with Steve Carell in it. And then you provided this, and I'm just like, this is nice. This is not bad.
A lovely counterpoint.
Yes, and he plays a tired dad, dad joking dad really well.
Yeah, a tired, well-meaning dad.
Yes.
Who is a little bit
Overbearing?
overbearing, yeah. A little
Yes.
stifling. A little smothering.
But I'm sure that this movie will work on that.
Which is actually pretty interesting, too, because you usually see, like, it's mothers who smother.
The neurotic mom.
Yeah, and dads who are, like, super permissive and fun. And this actually shows him just a very sweet dad who's in touch with his emotions and who is, like, trying to do the best he can do for his kids, and that comes across as smothering, but it's just that it's very, like, caring paternal.
And, like, very often when you see more strict fathers in film, it's, like, sort of the domineering, like, authoritarian...
Even corporal punishment kind of stuff.
No, like, we'll talk about how this movie interfaces with masculinity later, but...
Yes.
It's a lot healthier than
Yes.
a lot of depictions of fatherhood that we see in film.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so it's time, Mr. Summarizer. It's time for the Summarizer.
Time to suit up.
Yes.
Can I have a t-shirt? I want a t-shirt.
Make him a t-shirt. Make it, again,
The Summarizer.
The Summarizer.
Oh,
with,
yeah.
like, the big, bold letters that have bullet holes in them, and then right over it have the, like, cute little curly, glittery, like,
Yes. Give me one
cursive.
second.
Well,
and
it's
let
like
me
that. It's
add
like that
this to the
vaporwave thing where you
notes.
have like the really bold sans
Yeah.
serif font, and then like the neon sign above it that says the same thing.
yeah. But a new, exciting twist. It'd be even better if it looked like fucking PowerPoint.
Oh my god!
Yes.
Yes, word
Yes.
art, shitty word art.
Yes.
Could you bring yourself to do that, or would it hurt
Yes! This is, the whole vibe is like 90s Y2K stuff. Mitch, we have to do it. Nobody else is doing it.
I
You
will-
could do it with panache.
I would rather do vaporwave.
We can make it cheesy.
Cheesy vaporwave.
What if we did like 2 versions?
You have to talk to him about it.
What if we iterated? Please iterate.
I don't think you know the meaning of that word.
I do. I just.
She learns when it's convenient.
But we don't need to talk about that on the airwaves.
Oh, but we did! All right, so the summary of this film. So we have Steve Carell in the role of Dan, the titular character. He is an advice columnist and a recently widowered father of 3 girls.
Relatively recently. I think it's been a few years.
Well, it's been a year or two. The girls range in age from, I would guess, 17 to maybe... It's like 17, 15, and then like 12 or 11.
like 10.
Yeah,
I think she's like 10.
prepubescent.
Mm-hmm.
And he has been invited, he and the girls have been invited to the annual family gathering on the coast to stay in the beach house with a bunch of family members. And in the meanwhile, while we're having the preparation for this trip, we see how Dan is very well-meaningly being just a little bit overprotective of the girls. With the eldest daughter, she's just learning to drive, and he does not want her behind the wheel. With the middle daughter, she is head over heels boy crazy, and he's trying to reel that in.
She is a hormone bomb.
And the youngest, she's not really challenging, and she's not really trying to step much outside of...
I think he wants to baby her.
Yes.
And
treat her as younger than she is.
Yeah, she's young, but she is becoming her own person.
She's maturing. She sees more than he
Yeah,
credits.
but she still wants attention.
Yes.
Which as the movie goes on, he's not really capable of giving.
Or rather, he is at the beginning, and then
And then he gets distracted.
So, speaking of distractions, so he drops the girls off with the grandparents. We get to meet some of the family, and then...
One of which is his brother,
One of
played
which
by
is his
Dane
younger brother,
Cook.
played by Dane Cook.
Yeah,
which,
I was like, damn, Blast from the Past. I remember he was like kind of a big deal around like 2007, but I can't even remember.
He kind of got canceled, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
We don't need to dig too far into that. Suffice to say, it's a surprisingly nuanced and delicate performance from Dane Cook.
He's still a dick.
No, yes.
Yes.
But
he's not like a malicious one. He's just like that kind of self-centered brother
yeah.
dick, you know?
He's a subtle dick.
He's a very human kind of dick.
He's a softer dick.
No!
You have to edit this later.
But Dan goes out into the small town bookstore just poking around, and we have our meet cute. He is a man in probably his mid to late 40s, and he runs into a woman who is of similar age looking for a book, and he starts, cutting up and doing his Steve Carell thing, but in a more refined and charming sort of way, and they immediately hit it off. And, you can really feel that there's something there. So he's like, wow, I just met a girl. And his whole family is like, wow, you just met a girl? That's incredible. You should tell us all about the girl.
And then, redacted.
And then redacted, there are major spoilers incoming.
Yes.
I will say, without spoilers, that there is definitely a comedy of manners that
Which
ensues.
you fucking love comedy of
I do love a comedy
manners.
of manners, yes.
Which is possibly part of what got you on board with this movie.
It's what hooked me.
Yeah.
Yeah, more than anything. So,
Okay,
that is the summary.
Thank you, Mr. Summarizer.
This movie has been summarized.
I want you to add like machine gun sound effects to the back of that. Summarized.
Except it's a typewriter.
Ooh, that's pretty good.
Maybe, but like, maybe I could like layer them together or something like that.
That'd be really good.
With the
Or like one goes into the other, like it starts out like typing, and then it's like,
and then
yeah,
distant screams. Anyway,
that is the vibe.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into the main course.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, as we said, as the summarizer said in the summarizing, Dan is a widower, I think, of 4 years. I think his wife died 4 years ago.
you don't really get too much information.
Yeah, there's
on
not
her.
a lot of specifics because
Except that they had a real connection.
Yeah.
That they really, really loved each other and they loved their kids, and it was just really devastating.
It kind of like brings it in really, really like very slow at the start because like you have like the picture or whatever on the windowsill and
yeah, you sort of
Well,
like pick up details as you
and
go.
the
There's not
first
like a
thing
big
that
exposition
happens-
or anything.
The first thing that happens in the whole movie is he like wakes up and he turns over in bed and he reaches beside him and the bed is empty.
Yeah.
So it's like
Tone setter.
4 years on, he still is like reaching for her, but the ache is, it's old now, which actually I kind of respect that this movie kind of goes past the normal scope of grieving into that period where everybody's kind of come to terms with it, but it still hurts because it's always going to hurt. But
Yeah.
it's less, or maybe it's less immediate. But anyway,
It's different.
he has 3 daughters. Jane, who's the eldest, she's like 17, and as Jamie said, she's learning how to drive. She's ready for independence.
Well, she's
really
on the cusp of adulthood, basically.
yeah, she really craves new and exciting things, but she knows that her dad wants her to stay close. Kara, his second oldest daughter, is
Probably around 14, 15.
she's 15. I'm pretty sure she's 15, which is funny because she was like my age, but I could not. I was like, man,
not relate.
if I met this girl, I could not like we could not vibe. But she is very interested in this boy named Marty.
you can't marry a man you just met.
and she basically is like, I love him. I've only known him for 3 days, but I love him. And Dan is just like, you can't know in 3 days, you know. So anyway, she's very
Foreshadowing.
she is like the
yes.
she is the hardcore romantic, real Scorpio vibes.
Fair
Teenage
enough.
Scorpio. We're very passionate, very intense, feels all her feelings, very like
Big.
yeah, and
She
and
definitely
very
feels like Anna from Frozen. This is why I brought it up.
no. Anna is
She's not as cuddly as Anna.
Yeah.
She's like willing to burn down the world for this boy she's known for 3 days.
yeah. So and like
Point.
there's a point where she's like, Dad, you don't have to worry when it comes to sex. It's Marty who wants to wait. Dan is just like, what about that is supposed to comfort me?
Yeah. Like, Kara is the one who sends Dan into, like, the cackling fits. You're laughing because you don't know where to put what you feel about this.
Yeah, it's so absurd, but you're angry, but it's also absurd. And anyway, so go ahead, whatever. Kara is like the epitome of a hormonal,
Teenager.
but very passionate teenager.
Yes.
And then we've got his youngest daughter, whose name is Lily, and she's in the 4th grade.
So probably like 10.
Yeah, she's very sweet, kind of quiet, but she's not as sort of loud about the things that she needs as her older sisters, But she has her own opinions, and she has her own, like, thoughts on things.
And she'd like her own, other people's feedback for things.
Yes. Yeah. That's a very transitional time.
Kind of find her place. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fourth grade is very transitional. You're, like, right before getting into fifth grade, which is where, like...
Oh, boy.
Which is where the real awkwardness sets in of growing up. She's just before that.
Just on side note, like, we mentioned whenever we were watching it that these girls are actually extremely well written for who they are.
They
well written, well acted.
Yeah.
They feel their age.
Yes.
They honestly just feel like kids just on screen. Like, it doesn't even... It comes naturally.
Yeah, nothing about it feels forced.
Yeah, whoever wrote the script, too, did a very good job with writing...
Families.
With writing families and writing, again... People get children of pretty much every age wrong a lot.
They're either too mature or not mature enough, or a weird mix of both.
Yeah. This movie did really well with them. So Dan is like a family advice columnist. And right before...
Think like Dear Ab, something like that.
Yeah, like Dear Abby. So right before they go on their annual, like, family reunion... Dan gets a call from, I guess, like, a newspaper that wants to syndicate him.
Yeah, get picked up nationally.
Yes, and he's one of, like, 3 that are in the running, but it's very, very good news, and...
It's prestige, it's money, it's validation.
Yeah, and so he's waiting to hear more, but he's very excited about this. So after a few sort of bumps in the road, a few hiccups... They hit the road, and, they drive upstate or whatever to wherever they go, to this super fucking awesome vacation house. Or I don't know, maybe it's his parents' house.
Well, yeah, I think
it's his parents' house.
Cute little East Coast beach town.
Yes, and...
Sparsely populated, because it definitely feels like off-season.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think it's his parents' house.
Yeah.
And it's this, like, really great big house. And as soon as they get there, there's all these people, brother and sister, and, like, a whole bunch of, like, cousins and stuff. They're all there.
A whole swarm.
It is a lot of people.
Yeah. I really felt this, because, like, I've been to family reunions or family gatherings that are like this, and it feels so authentic.
Yeah. You walk in the door, and there's all these people, and they're all like, hey!
It's just an explosion. Yeah.
Yes, and you're, like, joking with each other, and,
getting caught up.
And, getting caught up on just, like, the most basic stuff. And Dan, that first night, gets put in the special room, because out of everybody, he's the single one. So
the special room being the laundry room with a cot in it.
The laundry room with a cot in it, and there's, like...
And I've been in that special room.
So, the next morning he wakes up, and his daughters all of them are mad at him because he has done something.
He's stepped on all their toes in one way or the other.
In like a small ways, but things that of course really matter to them. Like with Jane, he didn't let her drive at all. With Kara, he
shut her shit down with the boy.
Yes. He definitely shut that down. And with Lily, she said something really insightful. She said, "You're a great father, but sometimes you're not a very good dad." And he doesn't believe that she came up with it herself. He is like, which one of your sisters told you to say that?
He thinks that she's too young for that kind of insight and sort of like underrating how mature she is.
Yeah. So his mother, Dan's mother, is just, she's such a sweet but like firm lady. And she's just like, Dan, go into town, go into town.
You need to get out of here.
You need to give your kids some space. Go into town, get the paper, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, I don't know, Mom. And she's like, no.
You're going to
go.
do this. Yeah.
I love you. Go. And I was like, God, this feels so like such a family thing.
Yes.
Anyway.
Again, the family writing. I don't think I've seen a better written screen family.
Yeah, I don't think I have either. So he goes into town. He's just kind of like, I don't know, waffling around, and he goes to the bookstore. It's like this book and tackle shop, which I was like, so charming.
Combination bookstore and bait shop.
Yeah,
we will definitely talk about the bookshop later down in the vibes section.
Oh,
Yes. So this woman comes in, and the I guess the guy who runs the bookstore is on the phone, but she sees Dan and she assumes that he is working there. So she goes and she asks him for book recommendations, and he's asking her what she wants, and he's picking these
kind of
books
starts
off
vamping.
off the shelves. And in the end, he's just like literally been picking books at random, but he manages through all of this to kind of
Be a huge flirt.
be a huge, like, not even a dorky flirt. Like, he has a
It's just,
dorky
like,
moment or two,
fun.
but he's just like, it's a very cute, like,
Yeah, it's
thing.
not like cloying or creepy or anything. It's just
Yeah.
like light and fun and funny, and honestly, I'd probably fall for it.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. And so they go and they get some, like, tea and, like, a muffin or whatever, and they're just talking.
And their discussion honestly feels really, really ad-libbed. I don't know if it is or not, but like a lot of the
feels
back
that
and forth
way, yeah.
dialogue is very like, you know,
The chemistry's good.
Yeah.
It's good. And so they're talking. They clearly have a connection. Dan does most of the talking. The woman does most of the listening. Her name is Marie. But eventually she gets a call and she's like, oh, I really have to go. And she's
yeah, I
like,
have
this is
like a previous
awkward.
engagement.
I'm in a new
Yeah, I'm seeing a
relationship.
guy.
But Dan gets her number. He says something really dorky at the end of it, and he's just like, God damn it, I was such a dork when he's driving home, which is so relatable.
yes.
It's so painfully relatable.
It's that
been there.
It's that fresh crush vibe where
Yes.
you're like picking apart every single thing that you say and do around them.
And so he gets home, and everybody can tell something's different. And he's like, man, so I met a girl. And they're like, Dan, you met a hottie? Oh my God, Dan met a hottie!
Well, and it's this thing where he's like, he very reluctantly admits it to like one family member.
And then, of course, it immediately...
And it catches, like, wildfire.
Somebody overhears, and they're like,
Yes.
oh my God, you met somebody? And so it's like his brothers and
it's like
his
a
brother-in-law.
spark in a pile of oily rags.
Yes. So everybody's pressing him for details and all that jazz. And he's like, oh God, when should I call? When should I call? And his brother, Dane Cook, is like, let's go ask Annie. She'll know. So he like runs upstairs and to get, I guess, his like girlfriend to get her advice. And when she comes down the stairs,
It's Marie.
it's Marie.
Her full name being Anne Marie.
Yes. And they see each other and the expressions on their
oh
face.
shit
the
expression.
horror.
Oh god. Okay, so this was kind of like a make or break junction for me for this movie because like I really struggle with cringe humor
Ooh, yeah,
and
uh-huh.
secondhand embarrassment.
Yes.
And this movie plays in that space. However, like we had an off-air discussion about why it still works with this
Yeah.
movie. My point of reference for a lot of cringe humor has been Stiller movies, like, you know, Meet the Parents and whatever. The distinction here is that nothing's mean-spirited. All the awkwardness is, like, stuff that everybody involved means well.
Yeah.
And it's just not working out for reasons beyond everybody's control.
Yeah. Well, and it feels
yeah.
very human.
Yes.
But
It's a natural awkward as opposed to like a forced awkward.
and it's not mean. There's just something really like mean, or I don't know about mean, but it's just it's very over the top. It's meant to be like
It's meant to
ultimately
induce cringe,
embarrassing.
yeah.
It's less
in other movies, not this one.
So this movie is less punching down and more just like punching.
It's sort of like
it's more like gently ribbing.
Yeah. You're kind of like ribbing somebody with your elbow, like,
Been there, right?
yeah, I've been there, right? So the horror sets in, but they both play it off. And
Because they're mature adults.
Of
This
course,
is fine.
poor Dan has to listen to all of his family be like, Dan met a hottie, and he's wondering when he should, like, call
He's
her.
just sitting there just
And
like,
he's just like, oh, I just want to die.
Because all of this conversation is happening in front of Marie now.
Yes, and they are actively soliciting her advice.
Mhm, on how to date her.
Yeah. So anyway,
It's great.
and you know, his brother is also like Dane Cook, his brother, who
Yeah. But he's just like over the moon.
Oh yeah, his
clear-
name is Mitch. So
Oh yeah, he's bad Mitch. That's
forgot
why.
about this.
we'll
he's bad
we'll just
Mitch.
call him Dan's brother.
Yeah.
Hit bad.
Or
Mitch.
Dane.
Yeah. But he's very clearly like just like over the moon.
And he's like dude, go for it. And eventually Dan is like, she is seeing somebody, and he's like, is there a ring on it?
All's fair in love and war, man.
And Dan's just like, okay, God. So anyway, so he and Marie finally get a moment to talk, and he's like, if I had known with my brother, and she was like, I know. She was like, it's fine. And she was like, well, maybe we should tell them because, it'd be kind of funny. And he's like, no.
Absolutely not.
He's like, no. So they sort of like come to this uneasy truce. Before Marie goes to bed that night, Dan's brother is like, I think she should read your book, Dan. She should read this book, the one fictional book you wrote. She should read it. And Dan is like, don't do it. I don't think that's a good idea. And his brother's like, nah, it's fine. This is great stuff. And gives it to Marie. And they have to sleep in separate rooms while they're at the parents' house because they're not married.
They make a joke of that. Like, oh, it's, mom and dad's rules. Like, you're not married, even though you're in, like, your 30s and 40s. Yeah. You don't sleep in the same room while you're here. And, like, oh, God, I felt that.
Yeah. So, anyway, shenanigans ensue.
That's a good way to summarize. Yeah.
The whole time, like, Dan is wrestling with these feelings, and Marie is just being her spectacular self. She's well-traveled. She's
vaguely European. It's never really specified where from.
Yeah, she is just really smart.
The entire family falls in love
Yeah,
with
the
her.
family adores her. His kids love her, because she has something to say to all of them.
Yeah.
And
like, she meets them where they are.
They have very sweet interactions. And
Yeah.
They meet like on their level, and
there's this one time when they're playing like boys against girls crosswhenever puzzles, and I love this scene so much
because it's like your family.
It is like my family. We haven't done that specifically, but whenever we get together, we play all kinds of games, and it is just so fun to have teams of like 10 people.
Oh, yes.
like squaring off against each other.
I think it's important to note here that, like, initially, Marie is handling this awkward situation better.
Yeah.
Like, Dan is feeling all these, like, awkward feelings and also being jealous, because of course he is.
Yeah.
But there's an important flip that happens about midway through the movie.
But before that, there is this scene that is so... This one's like, oh my God.
Is it the shower?
Yeah. So this one could argue this is a little bit creepy, but it's also, like, it's one of those things where in the context, it's like, clearly these people are both kind of attracted to each other, so whatever.
Well, it's not creepy because the two that are directly involved in the event are just like, well, here we go.
Well, here we are. Yeah, so... So, at some point, like, Dan just needs, he's just like, this is not working. This is not working. And she's in the bathroom. So he, quickly hops in there, and she's washing her face or whatever. So she can't see him initially, like, cause she's got soap all over her face. And he's like, we need to talk. He's like, is this working for you? Is this working for you? And she's just like, what are you talking about? And he's like, this, like, and he's talking about the attraction. And he's like, this just can't go on. No, you need to, like, not do any more of that, like, sexy little, like, Zumba dancing or whatever. And
because Dan's brother is a fitness instructor.
Yes. And he's like, and you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make myself less attractive. Yes. And, Marie is just cackling about that. Yeah. And I was like, honestly, like, as a teen, I was like, that's kind of mean of her to, like, laugh in his face. And as an adult, I'm just like, I would totally just be like, this is so ridiculous. I would be laughing as well. Like, I was like, oh, I get it now. But in the middle of all this, Jane, Dan's oldest daughter, like, knocks on the bathroom door, and she's like, can I, like, talk to you for a minute?
Because, like, she trusts Marie already after knowing her for maybe just a couple of days, and she's like, I need some advice.
Yeah, I need some advice. And so Dan, like, hops into the shower. Yeah, he hides in
the shower, because that's the only place that's not visible from the door.
And his daughter comes in, and she's talking to Marie. Marie's like, oh, I was just about to take a shower, blah, blah, blah. Probably to try to, like, shoo her out a little bit or something. Or I think actually she might have been about to take a shower. And Jane's like, oh, it's okay, you can go, I won't look. And she, like, starts the shower for her, and so, like, Dan is immediately sprayed with cold water, and he has to, like, keep quiet. And then Marie has to, like,
get in the shower and undress.
And get in the shower.
And be full nude approximately 6 inches away from him.
Yes, and Dan is just like trying so hard not to like look at her, and he puts like a washcloth over his eyes.
He does it in a very slapstick way.
Yes.
Where he wets it and then he just like slaps it full force in his face.
And she's trying not to laugh because he's successfully transformed this
awkward moment,
super awkward moment, into a hilarious moment.
Well, yeah, like even in this moment, he's trying to make her more comfortable.
Yeah. Well, and also himself, because he's like, oh god. But anyway, while this is happening, his daughter is talking about like, she's like, you've been so many places, and I really want to go places too. I really want to like your opinion about this stuff, but I don't really know where to start, and I don't really know where to start with my dad, and blah 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 blah. And like somewhere in the middle of all this, Dan manages to get the like the bathroom window open
and tuck and roll out the second floor window. This bathroom's on the second floor. Yes. That's an important detail.
And fall out,
and into the bushes.
But I love that scene. It's just so funny. So anyway, and there's this horrible other scene where everybody's noticed that he's being really moody, and in particular that he is like, everybody notices that he's flirting with Marie.
Yes.
And
in fact, I think it's his youngest daughter that points it out, again showing that she has a little bit more insight than anybody gives her credit
like,
for.
Lily asks her sister Jane
why is he acting so weird around Marie.
Yeah, and then Jane covers for him, but she's like, everybody can see, okay? And so then there's this horrible confrontation in the special room where like his brother-in-law comes in and actually his parents confront him. His parents come in first. And then
he's like, you're being a dick.
You're being a dick. We think you need to start seeing people or whatever. And then his brother-in-law comes in and he's like, are you like, unclogging the pipes basically? He's like, are you taking care of yourself, man? Like, is this why? Like,
this is where it approaches Ben Stiller comedy territory, because like more and more of the family end up in the laundry room for various reasons, including Marie at one point.
And they're talking about this, and finally Marie comes in, and he's just like, "Oh my god, I want to die," because of course his family is talking about like, "Are you masturbating enough, Dan?" and anyway, but his parents finally get to finish.
There's where the YouTube demonetization comes in.
Well, we're not making any money off this right now, so whatever. I already said sex earlier, I think.
It's too late.
But finally, his parents finally get to what they went in there to say in the first place. And they're like, we've set you up on a date!
And this is the part that I wanted to talk about.
Yes.
So, there's a critical transition in this movie where the balance of power changes. So in the first half of the awkward comedy of manners, it's Dan who is sort of on the back foot and like flustered and jealous and doesn't know what to do, and Marie is cool as a cucumber. However, his parents set him up with a girl he knew from high school, I want to say.
Her name is Ruthie.
Yeah, well, and go ahead.
She's also known as the pig girl, unfortunately.
No, she's Ruthie Pigface. Which is like, this is like the one part of the movie where I'm like, oh, but then like, where I'm like, that's like mean, but also at the same time, it feels very, this sort of like cat, they're not like personally like, I fucking hate Ruthie Pigface Draper. It's just sort of like, it's like kind of what people...
everybody's like, oh, you hooked him up with her? Like, she was so weird in high school and whatever.
Yeah, but I just want to say, like, it feels like a... So, on one hand, I'm like, that's really mean. Yeah. But on the other hand, it feels like kind of what people say... They would never say that to her face and make her feel bad. It's like that very family or small town,
joke. Yeah.
At someone's expense, but not really meant to make them feel...
It's something that happens behind the scenes, yeah.
Yes.
But she shows up and she's Emily Blunt.
Yes.
And let me say, Emily Blunt does not have a pig face.
She does not have a pig face. And everybody is like, whoa.
Yeah, everybody's like, holy shit.
Dan is like, whoa. His brother is like, whoa. Mm-hmm. And then Marie is like,
Yeah, and suddenly, now it's Marie that's the jealous one.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's some, like, cringy moments where...
Well, and I think...
where Dan is, like, trying to dance, and he's just... Oh, he's so bad at it.
But is basically Dan's brother is like, well, I can see that you're feeling awkward. Why don't we make it a double date with me and Marie? That'll make it less awkward.
Yeah, and
I'm going to briefly digress into... This is what I mean by a comedy of manners. Everybody means well. Everybody is being polite and playing by the social rules. And that is where the torture comes from.
Yes.
Because it would be horribly impolite at this point to say anything about it.
Yeah.
But oh dear
and
God.
They can't say anything about it. They can't. They're too deep in. The lies are too many. So this happens, and Marie's like, I don't think he's interested in her. And Dan is like, oh, I'm not. And then, of course, he, like, goes and dances, and it's, like, this awkward, like, white guy dancing. But now things have changed. Now Marie is, like, she can't deny that she has feelings. All this time, like, Dan is doing, like, all these other things. He's being very...
Well, just kind of irritating the rest of the family, because he is, like...
They're like, he
does not have it together.
Yeah, they're like, he's acting very erratically. Also, sorry, in the middle of all this, he got a phone call from the syndication people, and they want to have a family interview.
They want to interview him and his family, because they're just like, oh, this is so much a part of your brand, we would like to meet them too.
Yes, so, like, the next day, they're supposed to, like, show up, and mind you, it has only been 2 days.
Yeah. This whirlwind.
Yeah. And then sometime during all this, I can't remember exactly when this happens, but Marty,
the
guy,
boyfriend.
Kara, the guy that Kara is like head over heels for.
He shows up.
He shows up. Dan discovers them like making out on like behind some bushes or something. And of course he sends Marty packing, but you know, he has this conversation with Kara about like, this isn't love. You've known him for 3 days. And she's like, yes, it is. And, you know,
And Marty, for his part, is, like, surprisingly insightful. He's, like, a
super
poet.
Chill. I love Marty,
yeah, like,
actually.
Marty has, like, all of 3 minutes of screen time, but he makes a good impression in that 3 minutes.
Wait, I thought that the initial discussion of, you can't really, fall in love, you can't really know this was the very first conversation.
It does. It's repeated here.
Is it repeated, or is it like a...
She's like, you don't get it, Dad. And he's like, what don't I get? He's like, that you feel amazing around this person, but you can't have them. And of course, everybody can hear him in the other room having this like conversation with her.
That's very clearly not about Marty anymore.
Yeah. And anyway, but Kara's like, so like Marty can stay, and that's when like,
and that's when he bursts
out. The unhinged cackling begins.
Starts cackling, and then it hard cuts to like a taxi door shutting on Marty.
Yeah.
Well, I can't remember if it's a taxi or if he called Marty's parents to pick him up.
I think they were going to take him, like, I don't know if it's a taxi. I think it might be one of the other family members is driving him to a bus where he'll get on a bus and go to his family members.
The joke still stands.
Yeah, like the hard cut. Like, no.
Yeah. So this is the night of the family talent show, which I also adore because, again, at my family reunions, we don't always have talent shows, but I do remember there were some when I was really young where there were like family talent shows. So this is like, I don't know, just the whole way that this is written. It's just very nostalgic for me, and it like good feelings. But anyway, on that night, Dan's brother wants to sing to Marie, and he wants some help. And Dan hasn't participated in the family reunion talent show since his wife died. But in this case, he does grab his guitar.
Plays backup for his brother.
Yes, but his brother is pretty nervous, and he doesn't know all the words to the song that he is singing to Marie.
Or he forgets them out of nerves.
Yeah. It's like, let my love open the door. Like that song. To your heart.
Yeah.
And anyway, so he's singing that, but he's having trouble with the words while Dan is playing guitar, and so Dan begins to sing too. And so you have this moment where they're both singing to Marie, and she's like, oh my God. and then Dan's brother is pretty much done with his part, but Dan goes ahead and he sings like the next verse. And it's a very like emotional verse. And there's just like, clearly Marie, she's like, oh, whoa,
she is
this
stricken.
guy.
I mean, so one of her ovaries was burst, just like seeing their interactions between him
the way
and his
Dan
kids.
took care of kids,
and then the other ovary burst.
Yes,
with the music.
Yes. So finally, later that evening, when all is cleaned up, she finally goes to talk to him, and she's just like, I can't I can't do this. Why did you do that? Why did you sing? And like, he's just like, well, I don't know. I just did. I had to. And so throughout the story up until this point, Dan's brother has been saying these like really good
pearls of wisdom
about love and all that stuff. And now Marie is like, she quotes those back with page numbers, and it's revealed that Dan's brother was quoting things from Dan's fiction book. So all of his brother's best lines were actually Dan's.
Yeah, so kind of the man that Marie was falling for in Dan's brother was actually Dan.
Yeah.
Speaking through his brother.
Yeah. And so...
And holy shit, what a turn.
Yeah, and like Dan had told his brother not to give her the book.
Because he knew that she would find out.
Yeah, and he was still trying to do his brother a solid.
Yeah, even in that moment.
So anyway, the next morning she leaves. And, you know, his brother is just like, what? The whole family is like, what?
Well, she not only leaves, she breaks up with him and leaves.
Yes.
Like, this is not, I need some air. This is like, I need out of here.
Yeah. But... an hour or so later, she calls Dan and wants to talk to him. So he drives out to meet her. By the way, Dan has already gotten a couple of speeding tickets during the course of this movie.
That's one of the best recurring gags.
Yes. So he drives out there. He parks next to her outside this like bowling alley.
It's pouring rain.
It's pouring rain. He gets into her car. It's very clear that they were basically just like, okay, this is happening. You know, we're going to make this happen. Like, you know, what do we do with the kids? What do we do? Blah, blah, blah. And Dan's like, oh, you know, I think that's a bit premature. And you can just totally see Marie's face fall. And then he's like, we don't even know if he can bowl. So they go into the bowling alley and nobody else is there.
They have the cutest date ever.
Yes. You had the wingman bowling grandma.
Wingman bowling grandma! Yeah, yes. She sees the two. They are the only ones in the bowling alley. This is how I know it's off season. They're the only ones in the bowling alley, and she like turns down the lights and puts on some romantic music and like, you know, the fancy spinny 90s colorful bowling lights.
Yeah, she turns it into like a glow bowl kind of situation.
It's great.
Yes.
Great. And they're both terrible.
And they're both terrible, but they're having a great
Yeah.
time, and they're, you know, finally sort of like free to express themselves, and they kiss under in the low lights.
And then the lights come up.
And his family has all decided to come bowling.
Entire family.
And
as you do.
They're all just like, Dan? Marie? What the fuck? And it's just like the worst
chaos.
Like, oh my god, caught out.
A nuke goes off.
And Dan's like, I mean, you broke up with her, right?
2 hours ago, man.
Yeah.
and Dan's brother punches him in the face.
At least he didn't hit him with a bowling ball.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Marie runs out. She's like, oh my god, I've just like completely ruined everything. Dan's brother like punches him in the face.
Fair.
Yeah, fair. But Dan runs after her. Like, his kids are also just like, what is happening?
Yeah, Dad, what?
Yeah. So he runs out there. He's trying to go after Marie. She's already like kind of driving off. He jumps in his car.
Motors after
her, and then immediately like he gets his
third strike.
Yeah, he backs into the police car, the same police guy who has given him the other 2 tickets.
Because this is a small town and it has maybe 2 cops.
Yeah. And so his license is immediately revoked, and he has to go home, and now he has to deal with like his family, and he has to go before he can deal with his family,
the interviewers
for his syndication have shown up. So he walks in, and like his family they've been kind of trying to like entertain them. His daughters are sort of sitting there. They've been talking to his daughters. All his daughters are super pissed at this point,
but they're also sort of like running interference for him.
Yeah, but they're still
solid.
Very, very pissed. And then and Dan walks in. He's got this like split lip. He clearly looks like he's been in a fight.
Just been decked.
And he sits down to talk to them. They're really excited to talk to him because
his entire family is seething in the room around him.
Yes.
His brother sits right next to him.
Not to mention, like, I'm pretty sure his families have been, like, honestly talking him up, too.
Yeah.
During the entire time.
They had, but there's also, like, they are very...
But
like,
there's
the undercurrent
too.
of, like, anger. And Dan comes clean to these guys. He's like, look...
I haven't been following my own advice.
I haven't been following my own advice for... like family stuff. So they're like, what do you mean? And so presumably he explains
He lays it out.
And after that, he's trying to, it's just, it just sucks. Everything sucks. But he goes to talk to his daughters. His daughters are all angry at him, not the least because Lily, during this whole movie, has been trying to show him something that she made.
And he's been distracted by shenanigans.
He's been distracted by Marie. And it's basically just like this really cute little collage she made of like their mom and them together and stuff like that in the ocean. And, it's, of course, very emotional.
Heart-wrenching.
So he goes and talks to them and he sits them down and he's like, I really, I got distracted. I'm so sorry. Like, I miss your mother every day. I see her in each of you every day. And so I am going to ground myself for life. And his daughters are like, literally, Dad, no!
Well, yeah, like, immediately prior to this, like, eldest daughter...
Jane.
Eldest daughter Jane is like, oh, you lost your license?
Yeah.
That's ironic. Like, basically all of his overprotectiveness comes home to roost.
Jane is like, you lost your license?
And Kara's like, oh,
Kara's
you
like,
can't fall in love in 3 days?
Yeah. Oh, you were like, smooching your brother's girlfriend, and then Lily is just really sad. So he sits down and he's like, so I am going to ground myself for life. And they're like, what? Like, Dad, no. And they're like, do you love her? And he's like, I mean, I don't know. I've only known her for like 3 days. I can't love her. I can't. And then he's like, no, I love her. I love her. I love her. I know I love her. Mm-hmm. And he's...
Well, and like, importantly, as part of this, they're just like, grounding yourself for life and focusing on us is what you were doing before that was causing you to be so overbearing.
Like,
that
no,
was the problem.
That is not what you need to do. That's not what we want. And so hearing that he does love her, they're like, well, then what are you waiting for?
Let's go get her.
Go get her. Kara, of course, is like, we so prefer her to you. Mm-hmm. And also by this point, like, his parents have already told him, like, look, you really screwed up. But you didn't screw up by falling in love with Marie. You screwed up because,
You're a dick about it.
Yeah. And then, so he's going down the stairs. He now has the blessing of his children, which is what he really needed. And of course, like, tears are shed and stuff. And he's running down the stairs, and he sees his brother, and he's like, hey, I'm so sorry. And his brother's like, wait a minute, hold that thought. And he, like, opens the door to go outside, and there's
Emily Blunt.
Yeah, Emily Blunt.
He basically hops into a sports car
Ruthie.
with Ruthie, Emily Blunt.
Yeah, and you can tell he's like, ha ha.
It's like, I'm gonna stick it to you.
Yeah, and literally Dan is like, oh, okay, he's over it.
Yeah, he's already over it. It's fine.
And he runs outside, and he's ready to hop in his car, and then he remembers he doesn't have a license.
Yeah, because the cops took him away.
And then his daughter is like, really? Is that so?
I have a learner's permit.
And I need practice. So she gets in the car. His 2 daughters also, like, pile in. And
like, it's the whole family.
His 2 other daughters,
the local.
Yeah, the nuclear family all gets together, and they drive into the city, and they go find Marie, presumably working out at or near where she was working out at
with Dan's brother.
Yeah, I think Dan's brother is still otherwise occupied, so she's still at this gym and without fear of seeing him. So he shows up outside the window, and she's like, "Whoa, what?" And then
the daughters show up.
And then the daughters show up too, and it's just like this, like, cute, like, moment of like, yes, it's gonna work out.
And that's where the movie ends.
No, and then it cuts to as the credits are rolling.
Yeah, and then
you cut to, like, basically, I think it's like a year later. They're getting married, and they're dancing
at the parents' house. They're back at the beach house.
Yeah, at the parents' house. Kara is with Marty. He's her date. Dan's brother is with Ruthie.
Yeah, they stuck together.
Yeah, which they were a better match anyway. They just sort of had similar temperaments. And it's very heartwarming. It's very like, yay, the family came together, and very much that feeling of like, you might screw up. You might even screw up big time and hurt people's feelings, but your family, ideally, is there for you. They will always love you. Even when you, like, mess up, as long as you make
amends.
They love you, and they They support you.
Like, this is honestly one of the, I guess, the quickest liar revealed tropes that I've seen. Most of the time, you kind of revel in the misery of the moment of, oh, you're such a terrible person. But, like, it's done really fast.
Is it?
Well, I would say yes. So I really struggle with the liar revealed trope. I find it exhausting because so many plots do it. And they use it to, like, score emotional points and, like, really drag it out.
Yeah.
But, like, very often, the liar revealed is, like, you put on an identity or you're even hiding something. And then, like, at the end of Act 2 twist, where everything falls to shit, everything's dragged out into the open. Everybody hates the main character now. The reason I most often find that exhausting is because they drag it out for a third plus of the movie. Because that's what the film wants to be about. It wants to be about, like, the consequences of all of this. But this movie is not about the consequences of lying.
Yeah.
This movie is about falling in love late in life and fast.
Yeah.
And sort of, like, some of it's the emotional fallout of that, but it's an ultimately positive movie, so it does not linger and drag out on those negative feelings.
Oh, baby.
They happen, they are addressed appropriately, but it's not made a spectacle of.
Yeah.
The spectacle is the awkwardness in between.
Bo is, like, so frantic. He's, like, panting in the microphones and...
He really wants his Chewie back, even though every single chomp picks up on the microphone.
It's okay, Bo. You'll get it in a minute. I promise, baby.
Yeah,
I love you.
Like, that's where I'm on the same page with Mitch. Like, this movie does liar revealed better than most, because, again, there's not this, like, shame flogging the main character. And it's like, the reason I find that exhausting is not because there's consequences for actions. The reason I find it exhausting is because, like,
it's used too.
Well, it's used too frequently.
It's misery porn.
Yeah, it's misery porn.
And this one...
Well, and, like, here's really what it is. You know that they're gonna forgive the main character in the end. So, like, why are you wasting so much of my time in this, like, space when you could just be moving on with the plot? Actually, that's the same reason I really hate misunderstanding plots usually. Like, oh, the two main leads of this rom-com hate each other for a third of the movie because one of them used a word wrong. Like, no, we know they're gonna get together in the end. This entire last half an hour could have been avoided, and I'm just tired now.
Well, and, like...
You refer to it as a twist, and the thing is, like, it's not necessarily a twist whenever that's the entire...
You know what's gonna happen.
The first entire... section.
Well, I think what really works for you is the liar revealed trope really meshes nicely with the comedy of manners.
Yes, it does.
That's what makes it work. You really understand why.
Yeah, it's
like,
earned. So many times when the liar revealed happens, it's an interruption of the plot. You have, like, this really cool thing going with this person's, like, assumed life or whatever it is, and then it comes to a screeching halt and everything falls apart, and it becomes a different movie briefly.
Well, yeah, the people are usually already dating, they're already in a relationship, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And then, like, it's just, like, this weird minor detail of, oh, I'm sorry, I'm actually an alien or something.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
But, like, in this case, rather than being an interruption to the plot and its themes, it's a continuation of it.
It enhances it.
Yes.
And it
it's a natural consequence.
Yes.
Well, it's earned.
And it, like, I don't know, it nests so well with the other themes.
Yes.
And yeah, but I really love how using various tropes and sort of other narrative tools, you have a story about an older person, a person in their midlife, having this head over heels, like having instant connection.
Yeah, having the excitable love that we mostly associate with young people.
Yeah. So, and also, like, they point out that there's no, like, oh, well, maybe Marie must be your real soulmate. There's none of that shit.
Well, yeah, it fully recognizes that his first wife, they were soulmates. They were great together. And now he's finding something new and different that will not replace that, but will still be good.
But is still, like, could still be just as important. Yeah. That could still be that same, or not the same deep connection, but another really deep,
not the
meaningful...
same, but another.
Yeah, not the same, but another. And that I think we tend to get really hung up on the whole, like, you'll only ever have, like, one true love in your life. One spectacular love, and if you find it and something happens...
That's it.
That's it.
I definitely have stuff to talk about in the dessert round for that specific topic.
Yes. And this movie is very pointedly saying, no, that's not how that works.
You can find love again.
Yes. That whole, like, you know, one and done thing is just not... That's not how it works. And I love that message, that rejection of that thing, and the very clear embrace of something I think a lot healthier.
Yeah.
Again, yeah, this is just the writing was done so spectacularly with bringing that humanness to the entire movie, with all the awkwardness and all the and all the joy and all the love and the complications and stuff like that.
Shall we address vibes?
Okay.
So yeah, you had specific vibes you wanted to call out, Mr. Vibe Checker.
Oh my goodness. There are so many vibes in this movie. So this is honestly the second movie almost in a row. I don't know where we are with
episode release order.
With the Ghost of Mrs. Muir, because that's also a very similar coastal, cozy vibe.
That's true.
That will probably be the one after this one.
Okay. If you haven't checked it out, you might be interested in it. It's pretty nice. So, vibes. The house that they live in is honestly, I want to describe it as a baby between a lodge cabin and a beach bungalow.
Yeah,
well, it feels very New England beach house.
Yeah, you have these pier structures. You have a lot of cobblestone. You have a lot of like wood paneling that's actually like not the Chip and Joanne kind of shiplappy.
But like it was actually built in maybe like 1910.
Yeah,
or something.
It looks like it was actually part of a ship at some point, potentially.
I don't know about that, but
well, I mean the
vibe is there.
The vibe is there. There's like a weird fog, misty kind of weather happening most of the time.
Well, yeah, like as a beach vacation town in the off season, it's empty, but it's not like desolate. It's just like quiet.
It's very quiet. It's very. It's just still and pleasant.
Man, it's like tranquil.
Yeah,
it's
tranquil is such a good
calming.
Word. Yes. I want to talk a little bit about the bookstore that they first meet in. It is a tackle and bookshop, leaning more or less towards bookshop.
Is this one of the things you want to run someday?
I mean, anything with a bookshop attached is pretty good. I mean, I don't read books too often, but I like the look of them. I like to
like the vibe.
The goblin brain is nice.
Yes.
Well, and fishing lures are shiny and colorful, too.
Oh, fishing lures. You know you can get frog-shaped ones. But you don't really see that too much. You don't really talk to the bookstore owner or anything like that. But the vibes are there. The understanding that it's I don't know, like
it's very small town, like cozy community vibes. Of like, it's sort of like how a lot of businesses in small towns have like they wear a few caps.
Yes. Speaking of wearing a few caps, I thought it would have been hilarious if it was like the wingman grandma was actually the owner of the coffee shop, and then like
and had like seen
them
before.
Really good.
That would have been so good.
Just I'm gonna go ahead and headcanon that.
Yeah.
Headcanon. Wingman Grandma is definitely the owner of the coffee shop thing.
I'm going to go ahead and add on to this. Like, my parents are from a very small town in Virginia, that there's businesses that feel just like this, where they're running like 2 or 3 or 4 different little hustles out of the same shop. And like, it's no longer this way, but apparently back in the 80s it was very common for like everybody and their dog to have a tanning bed in their business. So there'd be like shoe shine, key cutting, and tanning bed, and just like stuff like that.
Well, I think the best notion that I've seen of that is one that's actually fairly close to us. There is a mail house and a laundromat shoved into the same place.
Yes. Yeah.
A post office.
It's a post office and a laundromat in the same store, and it's like, that's great.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like there's just something about little towns and stores that are kind of like that have several things going on. They're built to serve the community.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, it just enhances that that attention to detail, that community, I guess,
And
like
not
feeling.
to like overly romanticize small towns. They have their faults.
Yes.
Yes.
Having grown up at least partially.
But they also have their charms in their specific ways, and this is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
I also want to vibe check Anne Marie herself. There was a bit in there early in the morning, some sort of shenanigans was happening, and she made the most perfect fluffy pancakes I have ever seen in my life.
Is that where you fell in love with her?
Yes. It's like, oh my god, these pancakes are perfect. Marry this woman now.
And then she intentionally burned the shit out of them to give them to Dan.
Yep.
Which was
Because she was
funny.
jealous at that point.
Yeah.
That was after the turn, yeah.
And then he ate them with a smile on his face.
Tard.
Because he'd just gotten laid.
Wait, did they
Well,
actually?
I don't think they actually...
No, I think he and Ruthie at very least had some heavy petting in that car.
They might have been, maybe. I don't... Okay, it is very open-ended what happened.
I don't know.
I suspect they might have made out a little bit. I don't think they had sex.
I think they did it.
Well, I'm going to weigh more heavily towards Jess because I honestly think that they just
the
made out a
two
little bit.
The two demisexuals.
I was about to say, but you're both demisexual and I'm not. They fucked.
I don't think they did because I think they're like
Dan's
Dan
smug
realized.
face the following morning.
It's about like he was smug because he was like, I caught you being jealous.
Yeah,
No, it
that's
was
what
that
I read
too.
into it.
They also fucked.
I don't. Mitch,
He would not have gotten back. He would not.
Demi solidarity.
He would not have gotten
Solidarity.
back in that sports car with Ruthie
He would have.
unless they
you
were
can
going to
put-
hook up.
Here's the thing: you can put
this
on
is-
that.
This
you
is
can
mind
put,
games, man.
You can put on that show.
Yeah,
and
it's mind games, and they fucked.
no.
No.
Okay,
I don't think
be
so.
comforted in your wrongness.
We are
No.
we are a wholesome channel here.
We have I'm just gonna say there is no canon here.
No, there isn't. It's
There
not
isn't.
explicit.
So both views are legitimate.
yeah,
It's implied either way, and Jamie's way is wrong.
they definitely did.
Anyway, moving on. So
Let's see here. Any other vibe checks? Reading through notes.
I mean, the bowling alley.
Yeah, the bowling alley.
Like,
I mean,
it's that
so
perfect,
sweet.
like, shitty bowling alley that was built in, like, the late 70s, early 80s.
But, like,
it has
they-
lighting from the 90s.
they slightly update it by like replacing the the scoreboard.
it's kind of hodgepodge.
Yeah,
updated.
It's the kind of place that thinks Mambo number 5 is still hip with the kids.
Yeah.
And they're kind of ironically right.
Yeah.
Okay, on a side note, have you guys gone bowling lately?
Not
haven't,
recently.
no.
It's fucking expensive.
Yeah, it is.
God.
But,
Everything is.
It's like $30 for like an hour for.
well, let's not talk about inflation.
Yeah.
But
Well, I was gonna say
this charming little bowling alley.
should we call it vibes or should it just be like this is like the atmosphere?
I mean,
should we try
both.
to, should we
It's
try
the
to
same.
elevate
No,
ourselves?
are you kidding?
Instead of saying
the finest china for this swill, remember?
we just
She said that in the first episode.
Yeah.
Only the finest china for this swill.
yeah.
This is fucking great. How come we don't have this more often?
that's true.
I guess I just am like, are we overusing the word vibes? And
No.
also, are we dating ourselves? Like,
Yes.
because we're like
We're
millennials being like, we talk like the kids. We talk about vibes.
Everybody talks about vibes.
Anyway, so any more vibes?
I mean,
Oh yeah, Chekhov's driver's permit.
that was hilarious.
I think
Well,
that's great.
I loved this movie also did that very well, where everything just sort of like comes back full circle.
Well, yeah, nothing's wasted. Like,
Yes.
if there is an event that happens, it comes back.
Yes.
And,
in the
like-
most hilarious way.
Yeah, like if anybody's familiar with the concept of the brick joke, this movie is rife with them. The brick joke being like, you set up a joke, you do the setup, and then you tell a completely different joke in the middle. And the third joke is where the punchline with, where did the brick go, gets resolved.
Yes.
Like, you have enough time to forget the setup, but you're immediately reminded and resolved at the end. Like, oh, right, that happened.
Yeah.
And it's got the element of surprise. It's got that satisfaction of resolving a dangling plot line. It's great.
So Hamometer, if you aren't aware, is basically my scaling for, you know, how absurd, how silly, how hammy.
Over the top,
or cammy, this, you know, campy a movie is. This one, I'd say probably about a 5 or a 6. Fairly average. The only ham really comes from Steve Carell and his circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's plenty to be had.
Yeah.
Oh god, the shower scene is 4. It's 4 in itself.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Wingman Grandma is 1.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of it is fairly subdued. Dan Cook gets his own point, so
Yeah.
6.
Maybe a half point for Dane Cook, because it's a subdued Dane Cook.
Yeah, it is.
It's still Dan Cook.
Yeah. All right, are we ready for dessert?
I think so.
All right, let's go into the dessert round.
All right, who's kicking this one off?
I'll go ahead, if that's okay.
Mine's going to be heavy, so maybe mine's last.
Okay.
So I don't know. This is kind of an interesting one for me. So this, I think, is probably the first movie that we've talked about in Media Morsels where the character work is just superb. It's not necessarily about the aesthetic, which is very good. I mean, I really enjoyed sort of the aesthetic and the vibes, but it's not turned up to like 10,
yeah.
which is what I really like. Here, the character work is just so fantastic. The writing is just so good at really conveying family dynamics, like that in all of its sort of facets, I guess.
The good, the bad, the overbearing.
Yes. But I think for me, my takeaway back in the day and up until now is that I guess as a teenager, you know, whenever I was writing, and at 15, that's like, I had been writing here and there for a really long time, but 15 was when I really started trying to write more long-form, cohesive stuff. And of course, being 15, I was very focused on other, like, sort of like teenage narratives or, you know, maybe young adult characters, maybe in their 20s, if I was stretching. Because those seemed to be the only stories that I was seeing and the only stories that seemed, like, worthy, I guess, in my mind. But this was the first, for some reason, Dan in Real Life was the first movie I saw that really made me think, wow, okay, like, you can have a love story between older people, which is ridiculous because my mom had started dating, like, another man at that point. Like, it was happening right
in a
front of
similar
me.
age range. Even.
Yes.
Yeah.
But this really sort of drove that home of, like, I don't have to write about people my age or teenagers or whatever. There are so many other worthy stories out there, so many other interesting points in your life that go beyond just like when you are young, because like even now a lot of our media focuses on like the interesting stuff happens when you're young, and when you're older you're settled and nothing interesting happens. And this really challenged that for me, and I don't know, brought more, I guess, humanness into the picture, and also started to challenge my notion that life proceeds in a certain specific order. And this is like, no, sometimes life can really surprise you and go in interesting directions. And yeah, you can fall in love in like at any time in your life, and et cetera, I guess. So that was really, I think, pivotal for me. And I didn't do anything with that when I was 15, but it definitely, like, I've always remembered it, and it like planted the seed, and I think that seed has matured as I've matured, and like now I am starting to branch out and try to write in different like age ranges. and different kinds of stories, I guess, with different emotional motivations beyond just like the sort of thing that I was interested in when I was a teenager, which is love, romantic love, I guess. Yeah. So, and this movie obviously very much has romantic love in it, but still, it sort of made me start to think a little bit more outside the box when it came to, I don't know, just the stories I wanted to tell and the dynamics I wanted to show and how to make those things interesting and human. So I think that is my big takeaway. And like I said, the character work is amazing, but we already kind of talked about that in the earlier sections, so we don't really need to rehash that. And of course, it's always very, very refreshing to see just a loving father, a loving soft boy father portrayed on...
Well, and he's not the butt of a joke.
On the screen, yeah. He's taken completely, like, seriously, flaws and all. And, we forgot to say that he also does get syndicated.
Yes.
At the end of the movie. He does, like...
He gets everything. He gets the girl. He gets the job. His family loves him.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, yeah, I loved seeing that as well. That very different take on fatherhood. A very sweet take. I think that might segue quite well into what you wanted to talk about, dear.
So, as the plot guy, and I've already given it away in previous courses of this episode, it should come as no surprise that one of my big takeaways from this film is the comedy of manners aspect. Because, again, like, it is masterfully executed in that, like, every single character, including all the bit characters and any extras that appear on screen, are all acting in good faith. Everybody means well.
Yeah.
And things still go haywire anyway. And that's the kind of thing that I find, like, satisfying and compelling, because it's like, you know, things can be a lot more surprising and humorous in that way, because, you know, we're all playing within society's rules, and things can still pick up pretty significantly, even in spite of that.
Yeah.
The thing that I find, like, kind of, like, exhausting or just irritating in a lot of plots is that sometimes the events of the story are motivated by one or more characters just being really stupid or being an asshole, like acting in bad faith.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of frustrating because, like, again, it's like how I was talking about with the liar revealed tropes and things like that. Like, it's just frustrating, and it feels like it's wasting my time because you know it's going to end up okay in the end.
Yeah.
But when you do it this well, the ride is part of the fun, as it should be with the story.
Well, and often with a lot of those liar revealed, building tension and drama things, they don't do enough character work to make it really make sense why this character is withholding information.
It doesn't
They're just
sell
being
it doesn't earn
catty
it.
or whatever. Because there are times when you could have a character that is just so... You know, they've been shut down their entire life every time they try to share things that at this point, it's just really hard for them to communicate. But if that's not shown, and if you don't take the time to show it, then
it feels cheap.
Yeah. So it can be done well, but you have to ground it.
Well, this movie is very good about just showcasing that, and, like, the reason why this one did it so well was because, like, the reason that was in the first place was he didn't want to hurt his brother's feelings.
Yeah.
He didn't want to cause a muck. He didn't want to do all these things. Like, it was an actual legitimate
You really
reason
understood
why they didn't communicate with it.
Like, it's justified, it's earned, and everybody's acting in good faith.
Yes.
You get why it's happening. It's not frustrating because you're just like, oh, if you had just done this, it's legitimately like, I don't know what I would have done in this situation. I don't think I could have managed it better.
Well, and as a writer, as a creator, as an artist of words, that's really masterful.
It is.
That's so well done. Super props to them.
Yes.
For nailing it on, like, sticking the landing on so many levels. Because it works from a character perspective, and from a plot perspective, and from a pacing perspective. Comedy is one of those things that the pacing has to be just right for it to land.
Comedy and horror.
And
you gotta get the timing right, or it doesn't work at all.
Yes. And for, like, this to work on all of those levels is just, like, damn.
It's extremely well done.
Yes.
And really a sleeper, because I did not hear a lot about this movie prior to being shown.
Well, because I Am Legend
overshadowed. It's kind of like the Matrix and Down with Love. But the other half of what I take away from this movie is positive representations of masculinity.
Yes. Yes.
So again, Dan is a loving and caring father. He takes that to an extreme in terms of like being protective to the point of being a little bit cloying, but he means well.
Well, and he's doing a lot of...
And he learns. He's teachable.
Yes, he learns. He finally listens, and he actually treats his children like sometimes he treats them like children, but he figures it out. He treats them as other people who he needs to listen to and respect.
Less helicopter parent and more air balloon parent.
Yeah, just sort of like floating there.
He's soft and fluffy, and he's just there.
Yeah, and he does things that are, traditionally coded
feminine
female,
coded, yeah.
like, or what a mother would do. He makes them sandwiches, and he individualizes each one.
It's
and
like little happy faces and jelly. And
stuff. And he does the laundry. And I know, like, since he's a single dad, of course he needs to do that.
These things.
But
he does it with care, and he is not ridiculed in the plot for it.
Yes, and I would even argue that a lot of plots where there's a single father, like, somebody else is picking up the work.
Yeah, again, those other single father plots either ignore those aspects entirely.
Yeah.
They either disappear, they build up in the background, they're outsourced, or the eldest kid takes care of it.
Yeah, which is another form of outsourcing, really. Like,
but no, like, this movie is really good about, I don't know, it treats a male character that is not big, macho, I come in and dominate every room that I'm in character with care, respect. He is very obviously, deservedly the protagonist, and nothing about what he does, aside from his idiot maneuvers, is ridiculed.
Well, and it treats men as being emotional, and
yes,
not like all of the men are treated as emotional. From his brother, who he's a little bit dramatic, but he clearly is a guy with feelings. He can be a dick, but he also can be a very kind person.
Well, yeah, he tries to have consideration for Dan. It just happens to be a little bit misplaced because of the awkward situation that they're in.
Marty is a very... you don't see him very much, but he is a very smart and in touch with his feelings young man.
Yes, very much so.
So Dan has been quoted by his brother. Mm-hmm. But he also, Dan also quotes from
Marty. Because Marty says at some point, love is not a feeling, it's an ability.
Yes.
And
which is really insightful for a 15-year-old boy.
Yes.
Having been a 15-year-old boy, I was not that insightful at that age.
So Marty is very emotional, and one of Dan's brother-in-laws or something, I don't even know what this guy's relationship to him is. He also, in the scene where they're all in the laundry room, he says, "You'll never have what you had with your previous wife. You will have something different." He says something like that.
Yeah, he's really insightful. But even then, all of the men that are portrayed on screen, they're making genuine attempts to do this emotional labor.
Yeah.
And good Lord, even in real life, you don't see a lot of men doing that.
Yeah.
And so to see it portrayed on screen so thoroughly, so extensively, is incredible.
And everybody in slightly different ways.
Yeah.
It's not like they're all cookie cutter.
Well, it's not like, there is one model for how to do this.
Yeah.
It's some of them are a little more awkward with it because they're not familiar with it, and some of them are.
Well, and they come at it with this bravado.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
The best way of executing boys being boys.
Yes.
Yeah.
And supporting each other, supporting the women around them, being competitive, but in a very healthy way.
Yeah, and it's honestly, this movie is so unexpected because you do not expect to come away with it with this is a movie that does a lot of work to do positive portrayals of masculinity.
Yeah,
a romantic dramedy. You don't really expect it to do that kind of work, but it really does.
Especially for 2007.
Especially for the time, because so much media in the mid to late 2000s was the toxic loner,
macho man,
macho alpha, whatever.
Or just like really awkward, but still kind of a dick.
Or like, I'm in touch with my feminine side, but I'm a joke because of that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Or it was homophobic, or what have you.
Yeah.
Like, it was the doldrums of media.
This one is unabashedly
it's
like
smart. It's compassionate.
Yeah. And I think compassionate is like the center of this entire story.
Yeah, compassion.
And I love that.
Yeah. And as a slight off topic, Dan's mom reminds me so much of my mom.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of physical appearance, in terms of personality and general bearing towards things. Like, there's a sense of humor there, but there's also, like...
Gentle but firm.
Gentle but firm. I feel like I know what you need, and I'm going to prod you about that.
Yeah.
But in, like, the most well-meaning way possible.
Yeah.
Very Mrs. Weasley kind of attitude.
Also this. Yeah, like...
a little bit more like subdued, but very similar, like maternal in every sense of the word, where
like a maternal strength, I want to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Between Dan's mother and Dan's dad, like, Dan's dad is, like, present and supportive, but his mom is the one doing a lot of, like, the heavy lifting, I would say.
A lot of the talking.
A lot of the emotional heavy lifting, which, as men and women of their generation would be, that's kind of how the labor is traditionally divided.
Yeah. But it still feels very, like...
real.
They are partners.
Yeah. And they clearly love each other, too.
Yeah.
Like, Dan learned how to love from his parents. It's obvious. Because they very much seem like they're in love, too.
Yeah.
So, that's me.
So, my takeaways. This one might hit a little bit heavier than normal. I don't typically really go into it very often. But whenever Jess kind of approached and said, hey, would it be okay if we did this? It has to do with a widower. I wouldn't really call myself a widower. I lost Panda right whenever we were about to get married, so I wouldn't really necessarily call myself that. But it's still very similar kind of situation.
Yeah.
And my main takeaway was it's a very heartfelt kind of, hey, it'll be okay kind of situation.
Yeah.
Yes, you did meet the love of your life. Yes, you had happy memories together. And yes, you've had, a sort of a family together. But it's like, that's just a part of your life, and that will always be with you. But you always, you still gotta hang in there and, not necessarily beat yourself up if you ever find anything. It's... How do I put this exactly? Like,
Would it be fair to call it, like, an optimistic outlook on grief?
Yes. I want to think that, like, it is very much like... I hate to use this phrasing, but it is a very silver lining to a storm cloud.
Yeah.
It's something that weighs very, very heavily on you, grief. It stays with you. You think about it every day, every minute, every second, every millisecond of your life. And it will be with you. And this movie has an interesting portrayal of it. Because yes, it has been, it's given plenty of time for Dan to, kind of sit with these feelings, and it still very much affects his daily life. He reaches out waking up, and that, even if it's 4 years, even if it's 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, you're still going to end up doing that. So yeah, main takeaway is those feelings of grief will be there, but like, it will help you.
It's not the end. It's you can have it is a story that says, you know what, you can have both. A lot of stories treat love found and lost as like, that is it, that's all you get, you only get one,
Or
and
you've got to move on.
Yeah. Or yes, or the other side is like, well, you gotta move on, man. Especially with men. Especially with men.
That is by far the most toxic, like, idea that I have ever heard.
Yeah.
Like, just in reference to you can't move on. Like, spoiler alert for anybody who has to deal with grief, you will not be able to move on. You will always... God, that's
Well,
okay, let me try this on.
Yeah.
Maybe it's, instead of saying, every cloud has a silver lining.
Yeah, that sucks.
Might it be more fair, and you can check me on this, to say that there are storm clouds, but the sun's still shining behind them?
That's a pretty good one.
Yeah. Well, it's that you may move on in your life, but you are going to carry that with you. It's not going to go away. It's not like...
And it's not necessarily a bad thing, because that person was important.
Yeah, that person was important to you. It's important to remember them and to remember the love. And it's bittersweet. It'll hurt, but it is...
Yeah.
There's a lot of beauty in the fact that you loved deeply enough for it to... Yeah.
I'm going to quote my therapist. He was actually exceptional during this entire time frame. He gave me 2 really good bits of advice. He said, first off, the grief will fade, but the love will remain. Mm-hmm. And the other part was, if it hurts this much, it means that it was real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so...
Yeah, I like that this movie is like, it's not like, well, you're a man, you should just, go ahead and get on with your life. And there's none of that. There's also none of the, like, Dan actually starts from a place where he says that he feels like he won the lottery once, and to ask for anything again feels selfish. Mm-hmm. But this movie really rejects that. Mm.
It does.
That sort of, I don't know, like fatalism.
Transactional kind of
transactional
thinking.
Or fatalism, or like you only get
one
the one
chance at,
and this one's like, you can
honor the love that you had while still finding something new.
Yeah.
You don't have to forget what you had before. And
love is not a once thing.
Mm-hmm.
Love, there are so many opportunities for love.
And you shouldn't necessarily beat yourself up if this happens. Like, if you've stumbled onto something, you shouldn't necessarily feel guilty, or...
It's not a betrayal.
It's not a betrayal, because that love is still strong, and that love will still remain.
Yeah, and nothing will, like, replaces the person.
You're not trying to put one person in front of the other or try and make comparisons. There's no comparison. Like, they're, the people that you love are the people you love, and that's their tier list. There's not any, S tiers or A tiers or anything.
Yeah.
I mean,
the loves
everybody,
are all going to be different.
Yeah.
all of these loves are going to be triple S tiers.
Well, and this movie very much is like, when you find love, open up to it. Let it in.
Let my love open the door.
Yeah.
To your heart.
To your heart.
Oh my God. You have to pursue it with every ounce of your being.
This movie is about all kinds of love.
Yes.
It's the romantic, the platonic, the familial, and, like, I feel like in doing this acknowledgement of, like, yes, you can find love again, it's doing what a lot of stories refuse to do, and just acknowledging that love is just an intrinsically human thing.
Yeah.
And non-strictly romantic love, let me say. But to find love for another person, that deep connection, whether it be, like, an excellent friendship or a romance or an adored child, what have you. Like, that's just part of being alive.
And we need to, like, embrace that.
Yeah.
And, again, welcome it wherever we find it.
Yeah.
And not have any sort of, like, judgments or preconceived notions about how it's supposed to work, because Dan is always like, well, you can't fall in love in 3 days, and then it happens.
Well,
yeah, as an advice columnist, he's probably stuck in, like, kind of a prescriptive mindset of, like, here's how things should be. And this is kind of a learning experience for him of, like, there's a set of how things should be, and then there's how things are.
And it's so much more wild and different and wonderful, messy and wonderful than what we often think is how it's supposed to go. And that's wonderful and freeing, I think.
Yeah.
It's just a really great message on so many levels.
Yeah.
All right. Well, are we ready to
Clear the plates.
Clear the plates?
Wash the dishes.
Yeah, clear the plates, wash the dishes, wind down for the evening, and actually go eat our dinner.
Eat our actual dinner.
To eat our actual... the dinner that sustains our bodies, not just our minds.
Dear listeners, it's currently after 9 p.m. local time.
Yeah, it's time. It's time. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us at the table this week. We loved having you. We'd love to hear from you. If you can find us on our social media and drop us a comment. We would love to know what you think of this movie, of any of the other movies or media that we've consumed so far. And if you think anybody else would enjoy joining us at the table, go ahead and invite them. We have plenty of room. We'll make space. I'm just thinking about like the different tables that they had at the family reunion. There's like the adult table and the kid table, and I was like, man, I so real.
That.
Oh
yeah.
God, yeah.
So yeah, well, hopefully we'll see you next week, and we'll save you a seat.